Immersive educational technology is here to stay. There's no denying that most people engaged in digital learning in one way or another have at one point or another given a thought to virtual reality and augmented reality. And these immersive technologies do for sure play a potential in making learning processes more effective, engaging, and meaningful. However, while we're digging deeper into this topic, let's keep in mind that technology is not a solution, but it's a means to deliver sound learning experiences. Learning experiences designed with a focus on social constructivism is very effective. The usage of immersive edtech becomes ever more interesting as it is especially apt at providing learning environments that are particularly suited for those kinds of approaches. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start with defining a few concepts. Here you can see a definition of virtual reality, and here's a definition of augmented reality. As immersive technologies evolve, a more complex and granular picture does emerge. There's an entire spectrum where the digital and the real world mix, giving rise to the term mixed reality, which is increasingly gaining traction. Extended reality is a recent addition to the nomenclature and is said to encompass virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. For ease of reference, I'll be using immersive educational technology, or EdTech, to describe VR, AR, MR, and XR. While learner experiences in virtual reality is usually more individual, AR, on the other hand, commonly employs a more interactive and social approach. Now, one could think that VR would be more popular due to its more immersive nature, but AR is actually more widespread in terms of usage, perhaps due to great popularity games such as Pokemon Go or Snapchat filters. Using augmented reality, and especially gamified augmented reality, has been shown to support cognitive development, improve memory recall, and increase learner engagement. AR is most beneficial when learners need to retain situational awareness about the room and world while still being able to interact with virtually created objects and other learners. Now let's take a leap down the road towards total virtuality. While there are different levels of virtuality, the most advanced ones can place learners in an environment where they can actually interact with objects and other learners. A lesser approach would be to let learners enter a virtual setting where the material is pre-recorded, for example. The added value of immersive edtech has been further strengthened by COVID-19 and the limitations on physical movement that the pandemic put on us. And this has highlighted the need for developing immersive tools where the physical location of the learner is not decisive for their learning experiences. In relation to this sort of spatial discussion, it's also important to acknowledge that research shows that we're using spatial awareness to assist our memory and our ability to recall information. This ability is limited using a two-dimensional screen such as the phone, tablet, or desktop screen that you're looking at right now. However, using a head-mounted display and immersive technology, be it VR or AR, lets us tap into that ability to connect to a place with our learning, and we can therefore remember and recall the information much better. Now, while the benefits are clear, there are several issues that we need to manage properly in order to have immersive edtech be effective and efficient. First of all, issues relating to health and safety are largely unknown, especially for younger learners. Second, an increased implementation of immersive edtech is highly dependent on strong network services, such as building out the 5G network. Several research studies have shown that this is a core aspect to consider, especially if the learner is not located in a controlled environment. And third, while perhaps the case a few years ago, learners' accessibility is today not a large issue. Most people do already own smartphones, which means that you're good to go in terms of augmented reality. As to VR, the only addition needed are goggles and possibly some controls. both of which can actually be purchased at rather low prices at this point. For me, working in the field of peace, security, and development, the usage of immersive edtech could actually prove quite beneficial in a lot of ways. Most importantly, it would allow us, or me, to expose learners to hazardous situations without placing them at physical risk. At the same time, we need to be mindful of the fact that we are placing them in hazardous situations that could expose them to psychological strain. And as such, we need to be ready to deal with that emotional stress and have a proper response in place should someone feel subject to that. And although immersive edtech is not a novelty, it's for sure in its infancy. And as such, we need to be careful in our application and mindful of possible advantages and disadvantages. Now, what do you think about immersive edtech? Do you have an example where you would definitely consider implementing either virtual reality or augmented reality? Or do you have an example of a learning experience where you would never consider it at all? Please voice your thoughts